Hello, everyone. I'm Peyton with BSC Publishing Group, the editor of MATTSON Academy, a YA fantasy novel by James O'Keefe, or Jay O'Keefe, who I am with today. Jay, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jay O'Keefe. I'm the author of Matson Academy, which is my debut novel. I'm really excited to get it out there and share it with everybody, and excited to talk about it today with you.
I know, debut novel. How does that feel?
It's still really weird.
Yeah.
I, you know, I've been my wife has been calling me an author for years now. Because I finished the first draft of Matson Academy almost 6 years ago. Um,
Mhm.
and
Wow. I didn't realize it was that long.
oh yeah, I wrote it like 5 years ago, maybe. I think I started writing it October 2017, and I finished the first draft in April 2018. So
Nice.
been working on it for a while. But so she's been calling me an author for a long time. I'm like, I'm not an author. My book's not out. And, it's not a real. She's like, it is a real book. Just because it's not been published, you wrote a full length novel. Like, how many
Hmm.
people can say that? I was like, oh, I'm sure. It's nothing. It's not real. I have that imposter syndrome a little bit, where it's like,
Right.
first it wasn't real because it wasn't done, and then it wasn't real because no one had read it, and then it wasn't real because only my friends had read it. And
Hmm.
even now, like, well, it's not real yet, it's not on the shelf. And I am sure I could walk into a bookstore, see my book on the shelf with my name on it, and say, yeah, but it's not on the New York Times bestseller list, so it doesn't really count, right? Um but but no, I'm really excited. I'm really excited to get it out there, and get people to get into this world that I've had a lot of fun building.
Yeah, we're all really excited. And yeah, yet is the big word here because September 5th, it comes out, whether you pre-order it or not, it's coming out.
Be there.
So exciting. Yeah. We're also gonna have a little launch party too. So tune into that, people.
Yes, stay
It's gonna
tuned.
be so much fun. Yeah, so Matson Academy, it takes place in a school,
Hmm.
big school, stereotypical high school, which I love. I love that choice. Not everything magical has to look are stereotypical magical. So that's really fun. But as it's a school, it has a big cast, of course, all different teachers, staff, students, so many students that I all love. But for you, is there one character in particular that stands out or you just love to write or anything?
Yeah, there is. So one of the first teachers I conceived of was an elf named Professor Screed. And I grew up on fantasy novels. I read The Hobbit in
Hmm.
third grade. I just fantasy video games, books out the wazoo. So there's a lot of the traditional fantasy races in Matson Academy, and it's tough. I found, because it's part of me wanted to put a little bit of my own spin on some
Hmm.
of them, but there are those ones like orcs and elves and dwarves that, like, if it's not Tolkien's elf, no one's gonna recognize it,
Right.
right? So I tried to put a little bit of a spin without deviating too much. So my elves are still long-lived, long-eared, uh,
Hmm.
traditionally more lithe and thin and willowy, and but I I don't know quite where I got the idea for it, but I envision them all with solid black eyes. No
Hmm.
whites, no irises, no pupils, just solid black eyes. I think it kind of gives them this otherworldly quality. Um, but as you said, Matson Academy takes place in the present day in a contemporary high school. So we have elves with spiky hair and face piercings, and denim jackets with band patches ironed on. And then we also have Professor Screed, who is very old, even by elf standards. He's so old that his black eyes have actually gone kind of cloudy and gray.
Hmm.
And another thing I thought was kind of funny is he's going bald. He's got, you know, the fringe of white hair around that,
Right.
because you always think of these beautiful elves with long flowing locks, and we have those too. They're there. But no, he's, you know, wrinkly, he's stooped, he's a very old elf. But he's so fun. He has kind of that wise mentor attitude about him, but he's got a sense of humor too.
Hmm.
He's got a mischievous streak, to be sure. He's not just, you know, doling out proverbs and the like. He has a lot of fun with his students. You can tell that he was young once, even if it was a billion years ago, and that he got up to some nonsense too. So
Hmm.
so here is actually the first time that we meet him. Here's
Ooh.
just a brief description of him. A wiry old elf approached the podium, grinning. He leaned on a cane with a heavy stoop. He was alarmingly thin. He wore long sleeves and a sweater vest, despite the summer weather. While most elves' eyes were solid black, his were faded to a cloudy gray. His face was a map of wrinkles, unusual to see on the long-lived yet eternally youthful elven race. Must be insanely old, Connor thought. Hello there, he said in a creaky rasp. He adjusted his spectacles. I look forward to teaching you about the basic components of the world and how to manipulate them in new and destructive ways. He chuckled. I will consider it a great personal failure if one of you doesn't utterly destroy my classroom at least once. Um, and I can promise you that the students make good on that. Although he maybe complains about it a little bit in one scene, so maybe Connor and Nanette and the others get into a bit more mischief than he was actually prepared for. But he's a lot of fun. He is the elemental teacher at Magic, so he has a decent grasp of all 8 elements, which is not as common. You know, most folks
Hmm.
specialize in 2 or 3 or maybe 4, but obviously as a teacher, he's got to have a wider skill set. But so he helps the students with each of them. The first couple lessons he teaches are you know, just getting to know each of the 8 elements and helping the students find which ones that they're most closely aligned with, so that they can go on to pursue that area of study a bit more closely. And
Hmm.
um, it was fun to write a lot of his lessons too, because he definitely gets very philosophical about each of the elements, which I liked, almost from like an Avatar kind of
Yeah.
perspective. There's
Yep.
definitely this certain personality traits tend to go hand in hand with certain
Hmm.
elements, and I actually created a whole big Excel sheet of cross-referencing the 8 elements on one side, the 8 elements on the other side. I have a list of traits that go with each of them, so anytime I need a new side character, I can just pick, you know, whatever their 2 dominant elements would be and pull a couple traits out and say, all right, we've got a spunky but serious nerd, or we've got a aggressive meathead with a heart of gold, something like that. That kind of
That's
sounds
awesome.
that sounds like Nanette, honestly.
Oh, Nanette. I love Nanette. Uh,
She's yeah.
that's so much fun. So just a quick little like side question.
Hmm.
If you were like you said like the kind most students have like 2 elements
Hmm.
that they like are proficient in, what 2 would you be?
Hmm. I would probably go with uh probably Shadow and Lightning. Um Lightning,
Mm.
not to toot my own horn too much. Lightning, I tend to associate with book smarts,
Hmm.
intellect. I think I'm a pretty smart guy, um, but it's also it's very quick. You're quick thinking, clever, um, but so sometimes a little too quick, sometimes a little. Sometimes the mouth moves before the brain thinks.
Hmm. Yep.
But then Shadow, like I've said, Shadow is an element of seeking and also of doubt and insecurity. And like I said at the beginning, there's definitely I have some of that imposter syndrome, some of that. Oh yeah, I think I'm smart, but am I smart enough? Am I? You know, it's so
Yeah.
I definitely have my own insecurities that I wrestle with, that there's a lot of me and Connor, I'll say, about that. So Shadow and Lightning would probably be the two for me.
Yeah. When I was reading through it, like every single time, I always think of which ones I would be. And
Hmm.
my mind always goes to lightning as well. Like I don't know why, but I have a fascination with lightning and like using that as powers. It's one of my favorite things. Like I not to like out myself, but like, I'm a writer too. I also have a fantasy novel that I've written. It's not completed yet. But my main character also uses lightning as
Oh,
his like main element.
okay.
But yeah, so I always pictured myself with lightning and like I always go between water and nature just because I love water and I love nature, but I don't know which one I would actually be. I'd definitely be a summoner though. I'd
Yeah,
have so many pets.
that goes along with nature for sure.
Yeah.
Let's yeah.
Yeah. So back to Screed.
Back to Screed.
Um, so I know he has a bigger, not to spoil a little bit, and I don't want you to spoil either, but I know he has a bigger picture and like bigger events in the sequels, which
Hmm.
I'm really excited for. You guys, you need to read the first book.
You
You
do.
have to learn more about Screed. He's such a cool character.
The second book will not make sense if you don't read the first.
It really won't.
I promise.
You gotta read it. But like, was there any like I don't want to like force you to answer this or anything, but was there, or like force you to think of an answer, but was there like anyone like in your life that inspired Screed, or like how did he just come into being?
Ah, you know, maybe no one specifically. I've had a couple pretty cool teachers
Hmm.
over the years. I had a eighth grade English teacher who was very casual with us, in like a cool way. I think, he was, so at eighth grade I was 13, and I think he was in his mid 20s at that time.
Hmm.
So he was the cool teacher, but he really leveled with us a lot. So there was certainly that. Um, I had a couple middle school teachers, honestly, that were just really cool teachers. There was a teacher in middle school that let me skip a lot of class and come to her class instead, and just kind of like, we did stuff. It wasn't just like complete abandonment of education,
Right.
but like, she was the GT media resource something. So like, we did all sorts of just like random stuff with like GPS data points and other computer programs that I'm sure were really cool 25 years ago that I can't even remember now, because your phone can probably do 10 times more. Um, but yeah, so maybe no one in particular, but definitely a couple. Just, I've had some good teachers, and I'm very fortunate to have had some cool teachers that really influenced me.
Hmm. Oh, that's so nice. I know there's definitely inspiration from a lot of real world for all writers. And it's really nice when, because like, you hear all about how teachers, like, they don't really care nowadays because, they don't get paid enough. They really don't either. But when you have those really good ones, it's so nice. And it's so nice when you can write them in books too and like show younger, well, not younger, but YA ranged kids that like maybe you haven't had the best teachers, but there are some out there.
Yeah, I hope that everybody has, right, at least, because I've had some awful teachers too,
Hmm.
to be sure. But right, it's nice when you find a couple that really are neat, that are just neat teachers, yeah, that really kind
Hmm.
of teach you more than eighth grade English, or what, seventh grade English too, I guess, was one of my other teachers.
All middle school. You had no good high
Um,
school teachers.
no good high school. No, I actually had a very good my math teacher. I had the same math teacher sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school.
Nice.
He was also actually very cool. Now that you mention it, maybe a bit of Screed comes from him too. He actually, uh, we would start every class with like a non-math based brain
Hmm.
teaser, um, and it actually, again, not to toot my own horn too much, but it did get to the point where the brain teaser was Jay versus the rest of the class to see who could figure it out faster.
Nice.
So
Ah,
toot toot.
goals. Goals. Um, all right, so Screed is the elemental professor, and as you said earlier, he has a little bit of proficiency in each element. Um, is there like a specific lesson that you like that he teaches?
So there's the shadow lesson, and this isn't necessarily a spoiler, but it's something that comes up a lot more in the second book, which is that in order to have a school at all, uh, you have to have 8 teachers that have kind of reached the pinnacle of each of
Hmm.
the 8 elements, right?
Ooh, interesting.
Because they have to be able to teach these capstone
Hmm.
spells and abilities to any of the students who reach that level. Like I said, doesn't come up, I think, in the first book, but Professor Screed is the capstone shadow professor, um, and
Ooh, fun.
so his lesson on shadows, uh, it gets a lot of time and love because Connor finds himself most proficient with shadow magic as well. In the shadow class, he starts by actually having them make shadow puppets and just kind of playing with candles and light and shadows. And as we get to kind of the end of the lesson, he really leaves an impact on the students. So
Ooh.
Connor amused himself by making shadow puppets on the wall: dog, cat, rabbit, bird. He didn't notice the professor join him. This isn't even magic, he thought. Aren't we supposed to be controlling the shadows? A single black feather fluttered down from the avian shape, and the bird leaped off the wall and into the classroom. The slick black apparition zipped around Connor's stunned classmates, weaving around flickering lights before flying straight through Connor's chest. Nicely done, my boy. Could you do it again? Professor Screed asked. He leaned over Connor's shoulder and pointed to the wall, watching it with a twinkle in his graying eyes. Connor twisted his hands and fingers into the shape of a dog. This time he really paid attention to it. The form on the wall smoothed from that of his conjoined fingers into something truly resembling a dog. Then it grew and grew. Connor gasped, and a smile spread across his face. The dog filled the wall, looked out at the class, and a low growl echoed in Connor's head. Professor Screed clapped, and the lights came on. The students cried out in surprise, and when Connor's eyes adjusted, the shadow dog was gone. Shadows are slippery, the old elf said. He dimmed the lights and relit the candles with a flick of his fingers. Dark reflections of the students danced on the walls around them. Think of every dark mood you've ever felt. We use the word dark for a reason. We all have shadows within us as well. Thought you said shadow magic wasn't evil, Garrett said, eyeing his own shadow and leaning away from it. Shadows are not evil, Screed responded, his voice taking on a strange low tone and rhythmic cadence. We seek shade on a hot day. When we are sad or ill, we seek the solace of silence and darkness. The shadows soothe us. He stood tall and raised his voice, gesturing with vigor. Our darker emotions can be put to great purpose. Anger can grant strength. Bitterness can become resolve. Fear. Fear is the foundation of bravery. The bell rang, but no one got up. The professor settled down and returned to his normal posture and voice, folded his hands behind his back. It is all a question of perspective. He half smiled, and his eyes twinkled with the reflection of the candles. His shadow flickered on the wall behind him, waving cheerfully to the students, while the professor remained utterly, perfectly still. Class dismissed.
Ooh, I love Screed. He's such a good teacher. I always, not to like, well, I am projecting on him, but I always think that when he was younger, he would have been a theater kid, just like with like some of the scenes where he just like he does things so theatrically and like with such flourish, like the flick of the wrist and like boom candles, like and then
Right.
just like I don't know. That's just my headcanon.
No, I get it. He's definitely a bit of a ham, but you can tell he knows his stuff too.
Yeah, it really does. All right. Screed. I love him. I'm going off of the shadow a little bit. I know it's not part of that scene or anything, but there's one scene, not to spoil, just read the book if you want to know the full story. But when Connor does Shadow Flame and Screed's reaction to that, I was like, ooh, I wonder.
Oh yeah.
I'm 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 eager for people to read that. I hope people talk about it a lot because I was very intrigued by that.
I hope
And
so.
how Screed reacted to it, especially, I was like, what does he know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm on to you, Screed. I'm on to you. But yeah. So yeah, that was Professor Screed. Any last things you want to say about him?
No, like I said, he was the first teacher I conceived of, and there's, plenty more. Um, but he was the first, and he's definitely one of the more fun to write because he
Mhm.
because he has fun. He has fun with his class, so he lets me exposit in a fun and interesting way.
That's nice. So yeah, I love that your first character was a wiry old wrinkled elf. Or your first teacher, I should
First
say.
teacher, yeah.
Your first teacher. That's amazing. But yeah, so you guys, if you want to meet Professor Screed, he's a great character. He has bigger parts in the sequels. You guys got to read him. How are you not intrigued by Screed? He's amazing.
He's
So
great.
yeah, comes out September 5th. Meet Screed then. Pre-order now.
September
You
5th.
know, hopefully by the time this video is posted, it'll be on all different sites, not just our website, BSC's website. But yeah, yep, order it.
Order it.
Jay O'Keefe,
J.
the
O'Keefe.
writer,
That's
right here.
me.
He's right here. Yeah, so thank you for watching. Jay, where can they find you?
So you can find me on Twitter at writes_JO, WRITES, as in writing a book. Writes_JO. Same on TikTok. I believe it's the same on Instagram too. I think I got the hat trick there.
Nice. Yeah. So go follow Jay. He talks about Matson. He does drawings on Twitter. I love them. They're so much fun. I hope some of them find a spot in sequels or other books. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, so thank you for watching. Go order Mattson Academy. September 5th it comes out. Thank you, Jay, for chatting with me.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll talk later. All right.